Daniel here for Tabletop for One and my top 10 crowdfunding tips. Now, I know some of you have been in the crowdfunding scene for quite a while and backed a lot of games, as well as I have. I've backed 100 games or so, and so far I've received every single game. Now, I've heard some horror stories about, games not showing up or getting delayed or the business going out of business, that sort of thing. And so I've come up with these 10 tips that I'd like to offer you when you consider backing a project. Now, we'll be talking about, Kickstarter in a general sense, but there's also Gamefound and Backerkit, both of which I've used as well. And so let's go on with the list here. And my number 10 tip is nothing is guaranteed. That may seem obvious to some, but honestly, I don't think people quite realize how much that encompasses. That means the schedule's not guaranteed. The shipping costs aren't guaranteed. Even the quality of the components are not guaranteed. They may tell you that you're getting the quality components, and then somehow during the manufacturing process, you might not get them, or because of budgetary concerns, maybe they can afford to give you the upgrades or linen finish on cards or stuff like that. So you have to remember that none of that's guaranteed. Even when they say stuff like this is Kickstarter exclusive, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but stuff like that's not guaranteed either. Now, Gamefound has a new option where the project's guaranteed and you can get a refund, but the vast majority of projects are on Kickstarter and you're not going to find those kinds of guarantees there. So always go into backing a game knowing that nothing is guaranteed here. You're putting money out there and you may never see anything for it. And if that doesn't put you off, we'll go on to number 9. And number 9 is delays are inevitable. That is just a fact, all right? So when you see the shipping estimate, the time frame, I would add 6 months to a year to every single one of those. And then you'll be surprised when they show up on time, because they do happen. I have a few Kickstarters that showed up on time or early, but the vast majority of them are delayed. And so you have to go into expecting that. So don't, if it says it's going to deliver December 2023 and, January 2024 comes around and the game hasn't shown up yet, that's expected. Unfortunately, in a lot of projects that I've backed, the communication has been lax. So a lot of those delays, you won't hear anything about it until it's months later. So if you're not very patient, definitely avoid backing games, because this is for the long haul. And along the same lines there, just realize that you may like the idea of this game now, but realize you're talking a year and a half, 2 years before you're going to get to play the game. So are you sure that that's the kind of game you want to play 2 years from now? If you're not, then you may just want to wait. It's going to sound like I'm going to talk to you out of backing games. Don't get me wrong. I love backing games. I find it's a great experience for myself. I love getting the Kickstarters, even years, 2 years, 3 years later. I think my longest one was 4 years. And I love it. I love the experience. I enjoy it, but it's not for everyone. So I'm going to tell you a lot of things that you have to be careful here. And so with that, let's go on to number 8 and we'll talk about stretch goals. So stretch goals are little goals that they have during the campaign. If the campaign funding reaches a certain amount, then they add on these new cards or these new upgrades or even mini expansions and stuff like that. Here's the thing about stretch goals. Stretch goals aren't always a good thing, all right? That's one thing I want to tell you about stretch goals. Sometimes they delay the project because they either are unplanned or they are planned, but they haven't been fully designed yet and fully developed. And so they just have an idea of what they want to do for the stretch goal, but they haven't really figured out and balanced it for the game or anything like that. So stretch goals, while they seem awesome and everything, you get this extra free stuff, a lot of the times it's planned. They had planned ahead of time that they expected the funding to go to a certain amount, so they expected to add these things to the game anyways. And you'll find that sometimes in projects where they have all these stretch goals lined out. Let's say it starts out at 20,000 and works its way up to 100,000, and the game falls short by $10,000. So it ends up at 90,000 by the end of the campaign. Then all of a sudden the publisher says, oh, we'll throw in that 100,000 goal anyways, because it was already planned. They won't say that, but the fact is it's already planned. And you'll see this on a lot of the big name Kickstarter companies like CMON. CMON has stretch goals planned 100 extra miniatures for a game. Not kidding there, okay? There's a ton of extra miniatures for the game. All right, moving on to number 7. And my number 7 tip is, are you moving soon? This is something you need to consider. If the game is not coming for a year to 2 years, if you're planning on moving during that time, you better make sure that they can address address changes. Sorry, the way I said that sounded weird. But make sure that they can accommodate address changes, because sometimes they can't. Sometimes they open up a pledge manager. The pledge manager is where after the campaign is done and you've pledged for a game, then you finalize what you want for the game, sometimes adding on extra add-ons and that sort of thing, but then paying for shipping. I'll talk about shipping more in the next point, but make sure that once your address is locked in, that you still have the ability to change it if something like that happens, or if you have a way to forward the package to you. Because if you don't, then you might be out of luck and that game might get shipped to your previous address. So you really have to take that into consideration. I've seen too many people get burned by the fact that they had to move and they weren't able to change their address. So definitely do your research on that. And that's gonna move me straight into number 6 and the shipping estimates. Don't trust the shipping estimates ever. Okay? They are never going to be lower and almost always going to be more expensive than what is listed for the game. So always expect double what they estimate. I'm telling you, that's just my experience. I've always expected double. So definitely consider that when you're backing a game, because those things aren't always locked in. And the thing is, you know, at some point the publisher may be subsidizing the shipping cost, so it's less expensive for you, but then later on in the pledge manager, they may decide, you know what, we're not going to subsidize it and it's going to cost more. And so they'll increase it without telling you, and they'll just cite that was an estimate, but here's the actual cost. I'm not saying that they're all doing it, you know, in a shady way, but just understand that those are estimates and they're almost always higher. So if high shipping costs is a problem for you, maybe you shouldn't back the game, because you know, you have to expect it. All right, and so on to my number 5 tip is, what is the publisher's track record? See, this is very important. This can actually lead to a lot of red flags if you're careful in investigating the publisher's track record. Because what you want to do is you want to check out the publisher's previous projects. You want to go in there, look in their comments, look in the updates, and see, are they fulfilling their previous projects or are there problems? Look at what people are saying about it. Look at the problems that they've encountered themselves. See if there's actually this bad track record that would give you a red flag as to whether or not to back the game. You see, here's the thing. But I've seen some publishers where they weren't fulfilling and they kept doing Kickstarters and people kept backing them, but people wouldn't look at their previous projects to find out that they weren't fulfilling them. They kept delaying them without much of an explanation at all. And so if you see that, big red flag. Like, don't back it. It's not worth it. You're gonna lose your money most likely, or you're gonna have to pay exorbitant amounts of money to get the game to you, sometimes doubling the cost of your original pledge. Because that has been done, it's been done recently, and it's definitely something to watch out for. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't back games that come from a publisher who has no track record. See, I personally love backing new projects, new publishers, people who are trying to break into the crowdfunding scene, because they only have a small opportunity to do so, and oftentimes they don't have a lot of people backing the game. And so I definitely like to join in on those. And so I often put in, you know, money on a project that I don't know is going to be fulfilled, because they have never done a project before and there's no track record. So know that there is risk involved in that, and I expect that 100%. I look at that and realize I may not get this game, but this is a project I believe in. I want to back this project. All right, and the number 4 tip is to all in or not to all in, all right? So when you back a game, you might be tempted to get the all in pledge that gets you 17 expansions, 34 promo packs, all these extra premium components, 5,000 wooden bits, and that sort of thing. Sorry, I'm being really exaggerating here. You always have to ask yourself the question, are you gonna play everything in that game? I mean, look at how much content there is. Do you see yourself playing everything in that game? Look at your current collection and say, are you gonna have the time to play everything in that game? Or would you just play the base game a few times, a dozen times, or something like that? If the answer is you're not gonna have enough time, don't go with the all-in. There's no need to. it comes with so many extra expansions that you don't know if you're ever going to be able to use them. And on top of that, you don't even know what they offer to the game. Yes, it tells you in the campaign that they offer, extra characters and different maps, extra scenarios and that sort of thing. But the base game already has what it has. And chances are the stretch goals offered are extra, that already give you extra content. So you probably don't need the all-in game. And this goes for big games that come from Awakened Realms, Come On, Steamforged Games, other companies like that, where they have these huge all-ins with multiple expansions. And I'm just telling you, if you don't think you're gonna have the time to play it all, just go in with the base pledge. And of course, I'm one to talk, right? I'm sitting here with a Galactus next to me for Marvel Zombies. But I went in with that one. I actually, I worked extra overtime because this was something I did want an all-in on, because I plan on playing through all of it. At least, 90% of it, because there's a lot to it. But I definitely plan on playing it. And so that was the reason why I went with that one. But for instance, Tainted Grail. I backed Tainted Grail, Kings of Ruin. I had the option of adding on the other core, and there was the all-in and all those. I went with the base one because I know that if I'm gonna play it, I'll probably only get to play the one box. And with the stretch goals that they have going into that game, that's more than enough. So definitely consider that. All-ins sound great, sound flashy. Of course, they look great on Facebook. And if you post this big pile of boxes that you got on Facebook and exciting, everybody's saying how wonderful it is that you got that pledge. But is it just gonna sit on the shelf? You gotta have an honest conversation with yourself about this. All right, so we are now down to the top 3 here, and the third one is Read the Rulebook. I cannot stress how important it is that you read the rulebook. Most of the Kickstarters I've backed have had a rulebook available, or if asked for one, the publisher would give a link to the rulebook. This is so important because you really don't know how a game plays unless you read the rulebook. They just give you little snippets on the campaign page of how it plays. They make it look flashy with animations and all that stuff, but it really is a lot more to it when you read the rulebook. I actually backed out of a game recently because I read the rulebook and I decided, you know what? This wasn't for me. And it was unfortunate because I was actually really excited about the game. But when I read the rulebook, I realized I didn't like how it played out because it just didn't feel like a game that I would enjoy in the end. So I backed out of it. And that's important because then you can use that money for some other game that you did read a rulebook and you realize this is it. This is the game for me. So definitely take that time. It takes a lot of time to read a rulebook. At least it does for me because I can't keep my attention long enough to read past one page. But it's definitely worth the investment in the time it takes to read a rulebook to make sure that that's the kind of game you want to play. Especially when it comes to the solo mode. This is a solo channel, although most of these tips work for multiplayer as well. But if you're particular about the kind of solo mode you enjoy, definitely read the rulebook because it very well may be not the kind of solo game you enjoy. So make sure that you do your due diligence with that. All right, number 2 is, am I missing out? That's a question you have to ask yourself. See, here's the thing, especially when you're on social media or on Board Game Geek or wherever, and you're posting this big set of Kickstarter boxes and goodies and stuff that you got, or somebody else is, and you're like, man, I wish I would have backed that game. Man, I'm missing out on that game. That person's having fun. I'm not having that fun. It's easy to fall into the trap of backing a game because other people are doing it, because you don't want to miss out on whatever they're going to experience. Be careful with that. So the publishers are trying to take advantage of that. They are making it flashy. They are offering all these stretch goals, all these exclusives, all this stuff. The fact is that a lot of those exclusives aren't even exclusive. See, the publisher often sells it off of their own website. So even if you bought it at retail later and wanted to get the exclusives, you can get it off their website. That's not always the case, but there's a lot of times where that is the case. So backing it on the Kickstarter is not always the exclusive way to do it. Even though the marketing tactic is trying to get you to fear you're missing out. Oh no, I'm not gonna be able to play that game. Oh no, I'm not gonna get those extra characters. Oh no, I'm not gonna have that exclusive expansion. The fact is that there's a very good chance that you can get it after the fact anyways. On top of that, how many games out there already are available for you to purchase. Like, is that experience so unique that if you don't get it, you're missing out? Or are there other games that you can buy that have a similar experience that will give you the same amount of enjoyment? So again, try to have that honest conversation about, am I really missing out? Or do I have games that already give me that experience? Can I get a game right now in retail that gives me that experience? Definitely talk to yourself about it ahead of time. Give yourself time to mull it over. Don't feel like you have to back right away. All right, and so we're at our number one here. My number one tip for you is to wait for retail. Okay, I know the Kickstarter edition has exclusives. It has extra promos. It has bonus things that you might not find in retail. But I'm telling you what, a lot of those games you can wait for retail and you can buy it then if it's still a game you want to play. You don't have to tie up your money. You can wait till retail, buy the game. Also, by that time, people will have received their Kickstarter editions and they'll be able to rate the game and give comments on it and let you know how the game actually is. And then it gives you a better time to be informed with your decision on whether to buy the game. Again, if you still want to buy the Kickstarter exclusives, chances are you can buy them from the publisher. And here's the tip. A lot of the times the publishers have those games on sale for less than what the Kickstarter or the Gamefound or whatever had it at. I have bought crowdfunded games for less than 50% of the original backing price. And that's with the exclusives, that's with the stretch goals and all that stuff. So really give yourself that time. Wait the year and a half until it comes out. Wait till people start playing it and see what people say about it. Wait to see if that's still a game that you would like to play. Because it's hard to predict, 2-3 years from now, what kind of games you will enjoy to play. Or even what kind of games you'll have time to play. So really think about the timing of this. Really think about, can I wait until retail? And on top of that, here's one I'll add on to this tip. You can always pledge at $1. I mean, it's not always, but like the vast majority of them, you can pledge at $1, which gives you access to the pledge manager later. And then you can decide when the pledge manager opens if you want to increase that to a pledge. Sometimes that means the pledge costs $5 more, maybe $10, something like that. But it still gives you much more time to research the game and to decide, yeah, this is a game I really want. And so pledge at $1 and wait until then, and then decide if you want to spend that money and back that game. All right, and so there you have it. That was my top 10 list on crowdfunding tips. Like I said, I sound like I'm trying to talk you out of it, and I kind of am. As much as I enjoy backing games, you really have to be cautious about the games you back, about the money you spend. Make sure it fits in your budget. Make sure that it's a game that you want. Don't do it because other people are doing it. Do it because it's something you want. It's the experience you want. It's the enjoyment that you're going to get out of it. And always be patient. Be patient because it's going to take a year and a half, 2 years to get it. Be patient because maybe you can wait on it. Be patient because you have to read the rule book. I mean, you don't have to, but I highly recommend it. Just take the time you need, make an informed decision, and don't be afraid not to back something. So let me know in the comments below what you thought of my tips, and ask me any other questions about backing games. I have a decent amount of experience, and I'd like to pass on that knowledge if possible. Please also like and subscribe to this channel if you like the content you see here, and if you'd like to support me on Patreon, I have a link in the description, and I thank everyone who has supported me thus far. And I thank you very much for joining me on Tabletop for One. Have a great night.